I would like to introduce to you all at this time a wonderful woman of God. She has a million accolades that I can share. And I will, but I want you all to know that she is a great friend of ours. She is a sweet person inside and out. She's also a woman of African Methodism, coming from Mount Zion AME in Putnam Hall, Florida. So we give thanks for having one of our own with us today. Our speaker is the Dr. Kenyatta Hills. And I think we're having some technical difficulties today, but it's okay because that's why we always have a ram in the bush. So let me grab my computer. Because my iPad decided that it did not want to function, so we'll work with this. Dr. Hills has 17 years of experience developing, implementing, and managing complex projects for organizations as a program manager and director of center operations. Dr. Hills is the co-owner and founder of DH Research and Consulting, LLC, a consulting firm that offers professional business services in the areas of research-based consulting, employee development, and training, along with seminars. Dr. Hills has taught in higher education for the last 7 years. In fact, when she came into the sanctuary, she ran into one of her former students at BCU. Dr. Hills has experience in teaching and creating curriculum for business research interests that include motivational language, emotional intelligence, organizational communication, business sustainability, business ethics, and organizational behavior. That's a lot, isn't it? I love it when we are intelligent, when we are articulate, and when we are empowered to do the thing. She is an academic contributor and chief editor for the international book, Multidisciplinary Perspectives in Thought and Leadership. Dr. Hills conducts speeches, workshops, and courses centered on the practice of emotional intelligence in personal and professional relationships. Following this introduction, we will have a pre-recorded sermonic hymn, and the next voice that you hear will be none other than the most capable, the most comfortable, the most heartwarming, the most professional, the sweetest one, the Dr. Kenyatta Hills. Tech team.
You came along, gave me shouldn't even have to introduce myself because First Lady, she did great. May I be transparent with you guys for a moment? I've heard that be said at work and things like that. It really don't move me. But to hear that introduction in the house of the Lord,
Yes.
it just confirmed to me that I'm on the right track in my life. Amen. Not only am I supposed to be teaching our community, but also sharing my best practices within the house of the Lord. Amen. So thank you. I have my script. I probably won't even use it half the time, but first of all, I would like to say thank you, Pastor Reverend George Reed Jr., my brother and my dear friend, as well as leading lady Tamala Reed, and the congregation of Union Bethel AME Church for allowing me to speak on such a powerful platform. I had an idea of what to speak about. I'm still going to speak about that, but I want to incorporate what I overheard during the tail end of Bible study about the anointing of David. Oh. The anointing of David, that's better. Now, when I walked in, I heard the tail end of the study that was stating that Samuel looked at all of his other brothers, the strong ones, the tall ones, the good-looking ones, the most fit ones for war, but those were not the ones that God chose. Right. God chose who had his interest in heart, yes. Who had the heart of God, and that was David. Yes. Because that's one thing about it I've learned in my life path with becoming closer with God, is that you may not look like the package on the outside, but God is going to pull out what he has already put in you in order for you to do the work that you need to do for him and for his children. So from David, and we talked about earlier, what's your name, sir? Brother Harris. Brother Harris, you spoke about David having empathy for the people in his army, empathy for the whole situation. And I wanted to use the word empathy to tie over to what I'm going to talk about today, which is emotional intelligence and surviving breast cancer. Now, emotional intelligence is a research topic that I have been doing research on for the past year and a half. But what emotional intelligence is understanding one individual, understanding their own emotions and knowing their own emotional triggers so that they can, what's a good way of saying it? Guide the emotions of others in a more positive way. Like, for example, I'm going to use business for example. If I was a business leader and I had an employee come in with an attitude, don't want to work, just negative, what I would do is I would ask them what's wrong with them, first of all, and that's going to open up trust that the leader cares, right? I'm going to go over all of this in my speech. So with you asking or myself asking, is something wrong? What's going on? They're able to explain to me what triggered them to be angry. It could have been something at the house. It could have been they woke up late, something going on with their children, or maybe they're going through cancer. Maybe they were diagnosed a few months ago and they don't know how to make sense of it. Or maybe it's a family member that is suffering from breast cancer. And even survivors, even though they have fought a good fight, they still need love and support from those who can at least have a little bit of emotion and empathy to understand where they're coming from. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go more into depth about what is emotional intelligence and tie the 5 elements of emotional intelligence with the 5 stages of dealing with cancer diagnosis. All right, so again, emotional intelligence is an individual like myself understanding my emotions so that I won't be triggered by anyone else's negative emotions, as well as I'm able to show them a leadership example of how to behave under static or negative situations at work. So the same rules apply to your personal life. For example, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, she had, first of all, before I move on to other family members, my mother, Gail Shepherd, is right there. I want to say thank you, because before I get to talking about grandma, I want to say thank you to you for raising me to be who I am so that I can be here. Amen. It was you and God and grandma and granddaddy and Timlin Joy. It took a whole community to help me to be where I am now. Not only financially, but I'm talking about prayers. I'm talking about even unasked prayers to help me through school, to help me working on the dissertation, to help me pay tuition, to help me be a better person for me so that I can learn this stuff just from business, but I'm able to share it with my community so that you guys can take use of it as well. But back to my story. My paternal grandmother was diagnosed with breast cancer about 2 years ago, wasn't it, Mom? About 2 years ago. And even though she resided in Louisiana, we still, because we're her grandchildren, we still felt what she felt. When she felt depressed and called us, we felt it too. So I'm saying that to say this: if you are diagnosed with cancer or a cancer survivor, you are not going through it alone. Your children are going through it. They're grieving. Your parents are going through it. They're grieving. And these same steps of emotional intelligence can also help caregivers understand why mama closed up in her room, or why she being snappy all of a sudden. She's going through the emotions. Y'all heard that before. She's going through the motions. The best way to do is just empathize with them, love on them, and support them. So I'm going to go forward and go over the 5 elements of emotional intelligence. Now, those are self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. Now, with self-awareness, that first element, that is where you are aware of who you are. I'm aware that I am Dr. Kenyatta Hills, right? I'm aware of where I am. I am aware of who I am in company with. And I am aware of how I should act or behave or handle my emotions. And when I first stood up, I was so inside, I was like, I almost started to cry. You know what I mean? But I have to control my emotions. Remember that? Be self-aware that there's a time and a place for everything. I shouldn't be crying and carrying on up here. You understand what I mean? Because that can draw out other emotions from other people. And not just, I'm just not talking about negative emotions, positive emotions too, because then that can get our program off track. But be aware of yourself, who you are. The next is self-regulation. Self-regulation is being able to regulate yourself emotionally. If you know being around a certain group of people is going to pull the negativity out of you or make you act a certain way or feel a certain way, you need to move from that environment. So that's a part of self-regulating. You are regulating your emotions. You're not allowing anyone else to regulate your emotions. Now, to tie this in with breast cancer patients and breast cancer survivors, I can only imagine, God, I thank God, but I've seen it with both of my grandparents. When a person feels like it is the end and that clock done started clicking, and the doctor may tell them you got 6 weeks to live, 6 months to live, or whatnot, you're going to go through the motions of grief. You're going to go through denial. Now, what I'm covering now is the 5 stages of dealing with cancer diagnosis. You're going to go through denial. You're going to go through anger. Why me? Why am I the one with the cancer. But in reality, why not? You have to think of that. Sometimes God allows, I'm not going to say he does it to us. He places certain ailments on us so that when we are at our weakest, we have to turn to him. We have to turn to him. I used to look at my anxiety and depression as something negative for years, but it wasn't until a few years ago I realized when I'm anxious and depressed and I get by myself, that's the best time to pray. That's the best time to read the scripture. That's the best time to surround yourself with positive people so that you can get back on track. Again, doing your self-awareness and your self-regulation. All right. So now I'm going to go back and forth. So now we're going to hit the third element of emotional intelligence, which is motivation. You have to be motivated to do right. Like Deion Sanders said, when you look good, you do good. When you do good, you feel good. So you have to motivate yourself. Laughing at me. But that's a good example. That's something that we can relate to, because he has said that over the years I've known Deion Sanders, and it picks you up and motivates you. A lot of times I don't feel like doing stuff, but I think about Deion Sanders a little bit in my head. If I look good, Kenyatta, get on up and take off these sleeping clothes. You'll start feeling good. Okay, well, let me move around my office and see what I can do. Then I'll start doing good. And that's doing my work and doing whatever I'm supposed to do at that moment. So that's a way of motivating. But when we connect it with breast cancer patients and breast cancer survivors, they need a lot of motivation externally from their loved ones, from their caretakers, from their pastors, from their community. Because from what I read, they feel alone. They've heard of other people having cancer and breast cancer and doing that, but this is new. You know, the unknown is very scary. Right. Only way you can get through the unknown is through prayer and belief through God. Yeah. All right, moving on to empathy. Now, empathy is something that I pointed out about King David. He had empathy. He had an understanding for his people, not only for his people, for them to do right, but for them to be guided by the Spirit of God. Right. So that's empathy. And with breast cancer patients and breast cancer survivors, they need to understand what is empathy, because maybe someone would come to them in an empathetic way and it makes them feel uncomfortable, like I'm not going yet. You understand what I mean? Right. So it's important that not only the cancer survivor, the breast cancer survivor and the breast cancer patient also understand that empathy should be shown to their loved ones and their caretakers, because that's a lot of stress. Like when my maternal grandmother, when she passed last year, she had dementia. And my mother and my sister, we took care of her. We grieved right along with grandma. When she told us, I ain't gonna be here much longer, we knew it too. And we had to go through those same steps of dealing with cancer, with dealing with her passing. Denial. I'm going back now to the stages of dealing with cancer. Denial. Grandma ain't got no dementia. She's just old. Right. But she had dementia. And with her dementia, it just shut down her whole body till she couldn't breathe. So that's the kind of dementia that she had in her brain. We became angry. God, why my grandmama? She was the sweetest person in the world. Pray for anybody, but why her? Again, why not her? Because if it wasn't for her leaving the way that she left and me understanding the experience of spending time with God, I wouldn't be able to share that experience with you guys. Bargaining, that's the third stage of cancer diagnosis. And that is bargaining, meaning, oh, I wish I would have did this, or maybe I should have went to the doctor last year and got that mammogram, or maybe this or maybe that. At that moment, it doesn't matter. If you went to the doctor 3 months ago, or if you went to the doctor yesterday, at this present time, you are diagnosed with cancer. Stop the bargaining and just deal with God and what he has for you to go through, whether he bring you up to glory or keep you safe in his bosom, and keep you here with your family. Okay, I'm going to skip back over to emotional intelligence, the fifth element, which is social skills. Social skills, they call people, what is it called? I want to say it right. People-person skills. People-person skills. People with people-person skills and social skills, they are more eager to listen than to respond. Myself and Lady Tamala Reed, we was on the phone probably about a week ago, and we were just talking about people communicating with you with their grief and their burdens. One way that I found to be beneficial is, it's nothing wrong with having a friendly conversation, but you need to let the person know or ask them if you don't know, are you talking to me about this to vent, or are we coming with a solution? So the same thing with cancer patients and cancer survivors. I know you're complaining, Grandma Dot, I know you're complaining, but are you complaining to vent, or are you complaining to get a solution? Because I can hear you vent and not use my emotions with the venting, but with finding a solution, like don't know where to go at to get your chemo, are you gonna have a ride, is daddy gonna be able to pick you up? Those are the type of things right there that, I forgot what I was gonna say. Those are the types of things that we need to keep ourselves informed with. I'm just gonna leave that where it is with social skills, because I was getting ready to go left. All right, so moving on, so we have covered the 5 elements of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. Now I'm going to go over the last 2, dealing with the 5 stages of dealing with cancer diagnosis. The 4th stage is sadness and depression. That is just something that we as humans have been dealing with from the beginning of time, because it's an offset of your hormones in your brain. So you will feel signs of sadness and depression if you're going through something traumatic like that of being diagnosed with breast cancer. And then the 5th one is acceptance. Accept the fact that you are going through it. Accept the fact that you are not the only one, and accept the fact that the Lord will lead the way. It's scary, it's unknown, but God has his hands on you. Now, moving right along. Now, what we just covered was, here I go with the teacher, here's the teacher. We just covered emotional intelligence and how it applies to our life. We just covered the 5 elements of emotional intelligence, which is self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And we have covered also the 5 stages of dealing with cancer, with a cancer diagnosis, which is denial, anger, bargaining, sadness and depression, and acceptance. Now, what I'm going to do for the remaining of our talk, I'm just going to list off 8 tips that are a good starting point to help individuals create their foundation for emotional intelligence, as well as a few behaviors to avoid as cancer patients and cancer survivors, breast cancer patients and breast cancer survivors, as well as a few facts. Some of them may be redundant from what we've already heard today, but it doesn't hurt to hear things 2 or 3 more times so that we can receive it and retain it. Okay, so starting off, when building your foundations for emotional intelligence, first, practice observing how you feel. If you don't know how you feel, how can you expect other people to know how you feel? If you can't express how you feel verbally, you need to try to learn. Even body language comes into play, nonverbal communication, when it comes to observing how you feel. If I stand up here like this, you guys can pretty much get the gist of how I feel. Don't want to be here, just talking, looking at y'all beautiful people. It's time to go. You understand what I mean? But you have to observe how you feel. Next, pay attention to how you behave. Because just like with emotional intelligence, self-awareness, self-regulation, you as a cancer survivor or the cancer patient, you have to be able to pay attention to how you behave so you can regulate it and put it in check. The next is take responsibility for your feelings. These are your feelings. They are not created by no one else but you, because you are the one feeling it. You are the one feeling the experience, living through that experience of that feeling. So it's your responsibility for your feelings. The next one, take time to celebrate the positive. Yeah. If you had a great day at chemo and you come home feeling good, let's celebrate that. Let's play music. If you feel like dancing, and praise God, celebrate that. But also take notice to what happens negatively as well. So you'll know how to mitigate your negative emotions when you go through chemo or you're not having a good day after chemo. The next one I want to point out is don't forget to breathe. A lot of times when we are highly stressed, our minds are everywhere, our emotions are just, we forget to breathe. Or if we do breathe, it's shallow breathing from here on up. You get the benefit of your breath when you breathe from your stomach, from your diaphragm. So when you feel, I do it all the time when I feel stressed. Just taking a deep breath, a good 3 breaths. Let's do it together. 1. 2, starting to feel better. 3, your body's relaxed, your mind is mellow, and that stress, if it's not mitigated, after a while you be done forget about it, because now that positive energy from that deep breath is taking over in your brain and changing your mood and your attitude, so don't forget to breathe. One thing, or a few things I want to say before ending. I'm going to skip all this because I'll be up here about an hour. Y'all know I'm a professor, I lecture. But what to avoid? These are things to avoid when facing breast cancer or being a breast cancer survivor. Drama. Leave the drama where it's at. You are in a state of healing. Yes. Even if you was at work, leave the drama where it's at. You are in a state to complete a task for your organization. In this case, your task is healing. Drama is nothing but negativity. Leave it where it's at. The next thing to avoid is complaining. And that's mainly for the individual. It's nothing wrong with expressing how you feel if you're having a bad day. But all day complaining, that's bringing everybody else down, including you. So you have to do some emotional intelligence again with yourself to regulate, to make yourself a little bit more positive about how you're feeling so it won't affect or impact your caregivers, your loved ones, your children, and people like that. The next one is dwelling on the past. The past is the past. And I know that's something that all us humans deal with worry. Worry about what we said last year that may still be on us, or what may happen next week. We need to be focusing on the positive of what's happening in the present. You going to chemo, you understanding how you feel, talking with your children about the doctor's diagnosis and things of that nature. So again, don't dwell on the past. Let's try to be focused on the present and keep it positive. Next, don't be overly critical of yourself. You are not the only one that may have been diagnosed with cancer. And the world that we're living in and the food that we're eating, quite sure you won't be the last. But the best thing to do is don't beat yourself over about it. Spend time with God. Try to get a spiritual understanding of why you're going through what you're going through, and apply those 5 elements of emotional intelligence so that you may be aching and hurting and going through the motions, but in your mind you're positive, and then you have surrounded yourself with people who love you that now understand how you feel. One of the hardest things for anybody to do is express their feelings, not only how they feel about someone else, but how they feel about themselves. And that's just everybody. I have a hard time explaining myself like that. But it's something that we all need to learn because we are human. We are emotional beings. We should have understanding and knowledge of our own emotions instead of allowing someone else to control our emotions. Exactly. God gave us this life. God gave Kenyatta her life. And I'm not going to let nobody else mess up my life with no negative attitude or anything like that, or even diagnosis of depression, anxiety. No, use that time to pray and get closer to God and build yourself up spiritually so that you can handle what God has placed in front of you. Because I'm a true believer. Any trials and tribulations you go through, I don't care if it's school, marriage, children, grieving of a past relative, God will bring you through and you will come out stronger than you were before. Okay, so I am going to now go over a few breast cancer facts, okay? On average, every 2 minutes, a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer in the United States. In 2022, an estimated 287,500 new cases of invasive, that's aggressive, breast cancer will be diagnosed in women in the U.S., as well as 51,400 new cases of non-invasive or non-aggressive breast cancer. About 1 out of every 100 breast cancers diagnosed in the United States is found in a man. So it's just not us women. We are all human. Men have breasts too. Look out for yourselves. You may think it's a bump or something you got bit, but it may be a tumor. Men, go see about yourself. Amen. If you're concerned about your wife or your sister or your mother with breast cancer, you don't think they're concerned about you too? Even though that's not the normal for us to hear about men with breast cancer. I mean, the only male that I know of was Richard Roundtree, who played Shaft. He had breast cancer, and he was able to be a testimony to men around the world, especially black men, that we have to look after ourselves. So he's a great example. The next fact, in 2022, an estimated 2,710 men will be diagnosed with breast cancer in the U.S., and approximately 530 men will die from breast cancer. So again, my brothers, my uncles, my grandfathers, all the men, see about yourselves. This year, 2022, an estimated 43,550 women will die from breast cancer in the U.S. But this is a positive now, there are over 3.8 million breast cancer survivors in the United States. In the United States. So I want to thank you guys for your patience. Thank you guys for your attention to listen to my speech. And I just thank God that I was able to speak to you guys today, not just as Dr. Hills, but as Kenyatta, somebody who is transparent or who wants you guys to learn about emotional intelligence. Thank you.
Let's give Dr. Hills another hand. This has been my friend for, over 20 years. It's been over 20 years, and I am so grateful that she was able to come and share with us. Pastor does an awesome job of breaking the word down for us, and I think that Dr. Hills did a great job of taking that word and laying it over an actual situation, in this case breast cancer, that we're bringing awareness about today, so that we can see ourselves either as survivors or caregivers or friends to someone who is going through or has gone through this, and how we can help support each other. Is that fair? Let's vow to get a buddy. let's vow to get a buddy and check on each other monthly. Before we go into our altar call, I look out over the audience.